The Serenity Dawn was dying, and Captain Zixera knew it. Her beautiful Valterian research vessel, once the pride of the scientific fleet, now groaned and sparked as it drifted helplessly through the Kepler belt. Warning lights blinked red across every control panel, and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. 3 days ago, they'd been celebrating the discovery of rare crystal formations in the asteroid field. Now they were counting down the hours until their life support systems gave out completely. Zixera's delicate fingers trembled as she watched another critical system fail. The Valterians were a graceful species, with translucent wings that shimmered like soap bubbles and bodies built for the low gravity of their peaceful homeworld. They were explorers and scientists, not engineers or warriors. When things went wrong in space, they called for help and waited for properly trained rescue teams with the right equipment and safety protocols. Her crew of 12 researchers huddled together in the main compartment, their beautiful wings folded tight against their backs in fear. Young Pixna, barely old enough for her first deep space mission, kept asking when the rescue ships would arrive. Zixera didn't have the heart to tell her that even the fastest galactic rescue vessels were still 4 days away. Their oxygen would run out in 2. The distress beacon had been broadcasting for 6 hours straight, sending their coordinates in emergency status toward the civilized inner systems, where species with proper technology and training could mount a rescue operation. Every major spacefaring civilization monitored these frequencies. The Altarians had the best rescue ships, equipped with medical facilities and expert engineering teams. The Centaurians were known for their precision and safety protocols. Even the Rigelians, despite being somewhat militant, followed proper emergency procedures. But the response that crackled through their communication system made Zixera's antennae twitch in disbelief. The voice was rough and heavily accented, speaking broken galactic standard like someone who'd learned it from a cheap translation program. This is Captain Jake Williams of the human vessel Bulldog. We picked up your distress call. We're about 40 minutes out from your position. Just hang tight, folks. We're coming. Zixera stared at the communication panel, as if it had grown teeth. Humans? The crew exchanged nervous glances. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories about the inhabitants of Sol 3, that nightmare world with crushing gravity, deadly weather, and predators around every corner. The humans had somehow clawed their way into space using primitive chemical rockets and sheer stubborn determination, but they were widely considered to be barely civilized. The galactic community tolerated humans because they were useful for dangerous jobs that no sensible species would take on. Mining operations in hostile environments, cargo runs through pirate territory, exploration missions to worlds where the atmosphere could melt your lungs. Humans seemed to thrive on the kind of challenges that would kill anyone else. But rescue operations? That required delicate equipment, proper training, and careful protocols. Humans were known for solving problems by hitting them with bigger hammers or simply ignoring safety regulations until something worked. Their ships were cobbled together from spare parts and held together with what they cheerfully called creative engineering. "Captain," whispered her senior researcher, Dr. Veldaz, "perhaps we should wait for proper assistance. The Altarians should receive our signal within the hour." Zixera looked around at her dying ship. The air recyclers were failing, leaving the atmosphere thin and stale. The artificial gravity kept fluctuating, making everyone feel sick. Sparks showered from the ceiling as more systems overloaded. They might not have an hour, much less the days it would take for a proper rescue team to arrive. She keyed the communicator with a shaking hand. "Captain Williams, this is Captain Zixera of the Serenity Dawn. We appreciate your offer of assistance. Our situation is quite critical." The human's voice came back immediately, full of casual confidence that would have been comforting if it wasn't so terrifying. "Roger that, Captain. We've got eyes on your ship now. Looks like you've had a rough time of it. Don't worry, though. My crews pull people out of worse spots than this. We'll have you fixed up in no time." "Fixed up?" Zixera's wings fluttered nervously. Humans didn't fix things. They rebuilt them from scratch using whatever materials they had on hand. She'd heard stories of human repairs that left ships functioning but completely unrecognizable. But as another system alarm wailed through bridge and the lights flickered ominously, she realized they didn't have much choice. The civilized galaxy's rescue services were still days away, following proper protocols and filing the correct paperwork. The humans were 40 minutes out and apparently ready to help right now. Regulations be damned. Sometimes, she thought grimly, you had to choose between proper procedure and staying alive, and the humans, for all their barbaric reputation, had at least bothered to answer when everyone else was still processing their requests through official channels. When the Bulldog finally came into view, Captain Zixera felt her heart sink even lower than before. The human vessel looked like someone had taken 3 different ships, smashed them together in a cosmic accident, then decided to keep flying the wreckage anyway. The hull was a patchwork of different metals, some sections gleaming silver, while others were rust-brown or painted in garish colors that hurt to look at. Scorch marks covered the sides like battle scars, and what appeared to be actual duct tape, the legendary human fix-all material, was wrapped around several joints and connections. The ship's design made no sense to Valterian eyes, where her people built vessels that flowed like liquid art, with smooth curves and bio-integrated systems. The Bulldog looked like it had been assembled by someone who'd never heard of aerodynamics. Antenna rays stuck out at random angles. Cargo pods were bolted to the sides like afterthoughts, and the engine section seemed to be held on by what looked suspiciously like industrial clamps. "That's their rescue ship?" whispered Dr. Veldaz, his wings trembling as he stared at the approaching vessel. "It looks like it should be in a scrapyard, not flying through space." But the Bulldog moved with surprising grace despite its ugly appearance. Captain Williams brought his ship alongside the Serenity Dawn with precision that would have impressed even the most skilled Valterian pilot. Through the viewports, Zixera could see humans moving around inside their ship, and what she saw made her even more nervous. They weren't wearing the pristine white uniforms of professional rescue teams, or moving with the careful deliberation of trained emergency responders. Instead, they looked like space mechanics who'd been pulled away from their coffee break. Captain Williams' voice crackled over the comm system again, still maintaining that cheerful, almost casual tone that seemed completely inappropriate for a life-or-death rescue operation. "All right, folks, we're going to get you out of there. Fair warning, though, we're not exactly what you'd call a by-the-book operation. We get results, but our methods might seem a bit unorthodox." Before Zixera could ask what he meant by unorthodox, the humans were already suiting up. She watched in growing alarm as crew members pulled on bulky, industrial-looking spacesuits that appeared to be made from the same patchwork materials as their ship. These weren't the sleek, form-fitting emergency suits used by civilized species. They looked like diving equipment designed for exploring the bottom of toxic oceans. Standard docking procedures would take too long. Williams announced matter-of-factly, "We're just going to EVA over and cut our way in. Hope that's all right with you, ma'am." "EVA? Extravehicular activity?" Zixera's mind reeled. Professional rescue teams used sealed boarding tubes and careful pressure equalization. They didn't just jump across open space like some kind of primitive daredevils. But before she could voice her concerns, the humans were already cycling through their airlock. What happened next defied every safety protocol Zixera had ever learned. 5 humans simply launched themselves out of their ship using small personal thruster packs, crossing the dangerous gap between vessels like they were taking a leisurely stroll through a park. No safety lines, no backup systems, just pure human confidence and what appeared to be complete disregard for the deadly vacuum of space. The lead human, presumably Williams himself, landed on the Serenity Dawn's hull with metallic clang that echoed through the ship's structure. His suit was covered with tool pouches, spare parts, and what looked like emergency rations duct taped to his chest plate. Through his helmet visor, Zixera could see him grinning like he was having the time of his life. "Ma'am, we're going to need to cut through your hull," Williams announced cheerfully over the comm, his voice slightly distorted by his suit's communication system. "Our gear's a bit rough, but it gets the job done. Might want to clear everyone away from the outer wall there." "Cut through the hull?" Zixera's delicate fingers flew over her control panel, checking structural integrity readings. "Captain Williams, our hull is made of bio-integrated metals. The contamination protocols alone require dash." "Yeah, about that," Williams interrupted, and she could hear the sound of equipment being unpacked. "We're not really big on protocols." More of a figured-out-as-we-go kind of crew. Don't worry, though. We've never lost a ship yet. Well, not one that mattered anyway. Before Zixera could process that terrifying statement, the humans were already at work. Brilliant blue-white light blazed outside the viewports as plasma cutters bit into the Serenity Dawn's elegant biometal hull. Sparks flew in spectacular showers, creating a light show that would have sent any civilized rescue team scrambling for radiation shielding and safety protocols. The Valterian crew huddled together, watching in horrified fascination as the humans worked. They moved with practiced efficiency, cutting precise geometric shapes in the hull while completely ignoring the shower of molten metal fragments floating around them in the zero gravity. One human actually used his gloved hand to brush away glowing metal droplets that were stuck to his faceplate, treating them like annoying insects rather than potentially lethal debris. "This is insane," Dr. Veldaz whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of cutting torches and human voices cheerfully coordinating their work. "They're going to compromise our entire structural integrity." But even as he spoke, Zixera noticed something interesting. Despite their rough methods and casual attitude, the humans knew exactly what they were doing. Their cuts were precise and calculated, designed to create an entry point without weakening the ship's overall structure. It wasn't pretty, and it definitely wasn't following any manual she'd ever read, but it was undeniably effective. Once the humans broke through the hull, what happened next made Captain Zixera question everything she thought she knew about emergency repairs. The Galactic Emergency Response Manual was a thick document with thousands of pages covering every possible scenario. It emphasized careful analysis, proper equipment, certified procedures, and above all, safety first. The humans apparently had never read it, or if they had, they'd used it for kindling. Engineer Tom Davis squeezed through the rough-cut opening in the hull, took one look at the Serenity Dawn's failing fusion core, and immediately started ripping components out of his own suit. "Well, there's your problem right there," he announced cheerfully, pointing at the delicate biocircuits that were sparking and dying throughout the engine room. "Your power coupling's fried, and your backup cells are deader than last week's pizza." Zixera watched in horror as Davis began pulling perfectly functional human equipment from his tool pack and literally cramming it into spaces where it clearly didn't belong. The Valterian fusion core was a work of art, grown over months in biofoundries and carefully integrated with living metal circuits that responded to thought commands. Davis treated it like a broken car engine that needed a quick fix before the tow truck arrived. "Captain, you can't just force incompatible technologies together like that," Dr. Veldaz protested, his wings fluttering anxiously. "The molecular structures are completely different. The biometal will reject any foreign components. It could cause a cascade failure that destroys the entire ship." Davis looked up from where he was welding a chunky human power cell directly into the elegant Valterian circuitry. His helmet visor flipped up to reveal a grease-stained face and the biggest grin Zixera had ever seen. "Don't worry about the warranty, Doc," he laughed, sending sparks flying as he made another impossible connection. "This baby'll hold together. I once kept a mining rig running for 3 months, using nothing but spare parts from a coffee machine and pure spite." While Davis performed what could only be described as technological surgery with a blowtorch, the rest of the human crew had spread throughout the ship like a controlled infection. Mechanic Pete Rodriguez had somehow wedged himself into the life support system and was making modifications that should have been physically impossible. The air recycling unit was designed to process the specific atmospheric needs of Valterians, but Rodriguez was installing human-compatible filters alongside the original equipment. "This is fascinating," he called out, his voice muffled by the maintenance panel he was buried in. "You guys breathe a nitrogen-oxygen mix just like us, but with about 30% more humidity and trace amounts of some kind of floral compound. Probably smells like your home world, right? No problem. I can rig up a dual system setup that'll keep everybody happy." Outside the ship, pilot Lisa Johnson was performing what could only be described as combat engineering in hard vacuum. Several of the Serenity Dawn's outer hull plates had been damaged by asteroid impacts, leaving gaps that were slowly venting precious atmosphere into space. Any civilized repair crew would have sealed the ship, pressurized the affected areas, and carefully replaced the damaged sections with properly manufactured components. Johnson had different ideas. using nothing but her suit's built-in mechanical arms and what she cheerfully called good old-fashioned elbow grease. She was literally wrestling the twisted metal plates back into shape. Zixera watched through the external cameras as the human pilot grabbed a piece of hull plating that weighed several tons and simply bent it back into position through sheer mechanical force. These suits are rated for about 2 tons of lifting capacity. Johnson's voice came to the comm system, slightly strained from exertion. But if you brace yourself right and don't mind voiding the warranty, you can squeeze out maybe 3.5. Physics is more like a suggestion anyway, right? The most disturbing part wasn't what the humans were doing. It was how they were doing it. They worked with complete confidence, cracking jokes and encouraging each other, like they were fixing a neighbor's fence instead of performing emergency repairs on a dying starship millions of miles from a nearest port. Communications specialist Bobby Chun had somehow tapped into the Serenity Dawn's computer system and was installing human software patches to keep the failing systems running. "Your AI is pretty sophisticated," Chin commented, his fingers flying over control panels that weren't designed for human hands. "But it's having trouble adapting to all these new hybrid systems we're installing. I'm going to upload some of our adaptive protocols. They're not pretty, but they're flexible. Think of it like teaching your computer to speak human." Dr. Veldaz looked like he was about to faint. "You're installing alien software into our ship's brain? The compatibility issues alone could cause permanent damage to our entire database." Chin shrugged, not even looking up from his work. "Worst case scenario, you get some quirky behavior and maybe a few error messages in broken English. Best case, your ship learns to think outside the box. Either way, it's better than being dead, right?" What amazed Zixera most was how the humans coordinated their efforts without any apparent chain of command or formal procedure. They simply saw problems and fixed them, calling out discoveries and solutions to each other like they were having casual conversations. When Davis needed a specific component, Rodriguez would toss it across the room without being asked. When Johnson needed someone to monitor structural integrity while she bent hull plates, Chin would pull up the necessary readings without missing a beat in his own work. "You know what's funny?" Davis said, pausing to wipe sweat from his forehead. "Back home, this kind of repair job would be considered pretty routine. Just another day at the office. But out here in the fancy part of the galaxy, apparently you folks like to make things complicated." 18 hours after the humans had started their impossible repairs, Captain Zixera stood on her bridge and couldn't believe what she was seeing. The Serenity Dawn wasn't just working again. It was running better than it ever had before. Every system was humming along smoothly. The lights were steady and bright, and the air felt fresher than she remembered. It was like her ship had been reborn, stronger and more capable than when it first left the shipyard. The fusion core, which had been on the verge of complete failure, now purred with steady power thanks to Tom Davis's impossible combination of human and Valterian technology. The hybrid power cells he jury-rigged were actually producing 15% more energy than the original design, while running cooler and more efficiently. The biometal circuits had somehow adapted to the crude human components, creating connections that shouldn't have existed according to every engineering textbook in the galaxy. "This is remarkable," Dr. Veldaz whispered, running his delicate fingers over control panels that now responded faster than ever before. The biometal has actually grown around the human components, integrating them into the ship's nervous system. It's like our ship learned to think in a completely new way. The life support system was another miracle. Pete Rodriguez had somehow created a dual atmosphere setup that could switch between Valterian and human environmental needs instantly. More impressive, the system was now recycling air and water with 97% efficiency, compared to the original 85%. The humidity felt perfect. The temperature was stable, and there was even a faint, pleasant smell that reminded Zixera of spring mornings on her homeworld. Outside, Lisa Johnson's brutal hull repairs had resulted in armor plating that was actually stronger than the original design. The twisted metal she bent back into shape had developed stress patterns that distributed impact force more effectively. What it looked like rough, ugly patches were now integral parts of the ship's defensive structure. Captain Williams found Zixera staring at her engineering readouts in amazement. "Pretty neat, huh?" he said, wiping his hands on a rag that looked like it'd seen better decades. "Davis has this theory that hybrid systems work better, because they can't rely on just one way of thinking. Forces everything to be more flexible. That's when the official Galactic Rescue Fleet finally arrived. 3 pristine white vessels dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming and their running lights blinking in synchronized patterns. The lead ship immediately began broadcasting on all emergency frequencies, demanding status reports and coordinate information. Commander Zalfrex of the Altarian Rescue Service materialized on Serenity Dawn's bridge via holographic projector, his forearms folded in official disapproval. He was wearing the spotless blue uniform of the Galactic Emergency Response Corps, complete with service medals and efficiency ratings displayed prominently on his chest. "Captain Zixera," he announced in the clipped, precise tone that all Altarians use for official business, "I am here to coordinate your rescue operation. Please provide a full status report on your vessel's condition and prepare for immediate evacuation to our medical facilities." Zixera gestured helplessly around her perfectly functioning bridge. "Commander, I appreciate your prompt response, but the situation has been resolved." Zalfrex's orange eyes narrowed as he took in the operational status displays and the obvious signs that the ship was running normally. "Resolved? According to our records, you were experiencing critical system failures across multiple primary and secondary systems. Such damage cannot simply be resolved without proper repair facilities and certified technicians." "Well, about that," Captain Williams interjected, stepping into the hologram's view with his usual casual grin. "We happened to be in the neighborhood, so we gave them a hand." "No big deal." The Altarian commander's entire posture stiffened as he took in Williams' oil-stained coveralls and the human's complete lack of official insignia or credentials. "And you are—" "Jake Williams, captain of the Bulldog. We're an independent salvage and repair outfit. These folks were in trouble, so we helped out." "Helped out?" Zalfrex's voice rose to a pitch that hurt Valtarian ears. "Do you have any idea how many regulations you violated? Emergency response operations require proper certification, safety protocols, contamination procedures, and oversight from qualified authorities. You can't simply help people without following proper channels." Williams just shrugged and pulled out a battered data tablet, offering it to the fuming official. "All the specs are in there, buddy. Feel free to use them next time someone needs help, and you're still 4 days away." Zalfrex snatched the tablet and began scrolling through the technical data, his eyes growing wider with each page. "These modifications are impossible. You've integrated completely incompatible technologies. The safety margins alone should have caused catastrophic failure." "Should have, maybe," Williams replied cheerfully. "But they didn't. Sometimes impossible just means nobody's tried it yet." As the human crew packed up their tools and prepared to leave, Engineer Davis spotted young Pixna watching him with wide, fascinated eyes. The Valteri researcher had spent the entire 18 hours observing the humans' work, asking endless questions about their techniques and equipment. "Hey, kid," Davis called out, tossing her a small device that looked like a cross between a communicator and a power tool. "Keep this handy. It's an emergency beacon that broadcasts on human frequencies. You never know when you might need to call in the cavalry again." Pixna caught the device carefully, turning it over in her delicate hands. "What does cavalry mean?" Davis grinned. "It's an old Earth term. Means the good guys who show up when everybody else thinks the situation is hopeless." The Bulldog prepared to jump to hyperspace, its mismatched engines warming up with a sound like controlled thunder. Williams appeared on the main screen one last time, giving them a casual salute. "Take care of yourselves out there, folks. And remember, if you're ever in real trouble again, don't wait for the official rescue teams. Give us a call. We're always happy to help." The human ship vanished into hyperspace with a flash of light, leaving behind a very confused Altarian rescue commander and a ship full of grateful aliens who had learned that sometimes the best help comes from the most unexpected places. Commander Zalfrex filed his official report 3 days after the incident, and that's when the real comedy began. The report landed on the desk of Senior Administrator Quindow at Galactic Emergency Services headquarters, who took one look at the technical specifications and immediately forwarded it to the Department of Impossible Engineering Claims. They passed it along to the Bureau of Regulatory Violations, who sent a committee for review of unauthorized rescue operations. For 6 months, that report bounced between different departments like a cosmic ping-pong ball. Every official who read it had the same reaction. This couldn't possibly be true. Humans were barely civilized. Everyone knew that. They lived on a death world that would kill most species in minutes, used primitive technology held together with adhesive tape, and had a reputation for solving problems by hitting them with bigger hammers. The idea that these same humans had performed advanced engineering repairs that exceeded galactic standards was clearly impossible. So the report got stamped, requires further investigation, and filed away in a digital cabinet where it gathered electronic dust alongside thousands of other claims that bureaucrats didn't want to deal with. But while the officials argued about proper procedures and regulatory compliance, word was spreading through the scientific community like wildfire. Research teams talked to each other, especially when someone has a story as incredible as the Serenity Dawn rescue. Within weeks, every major university and exploration vessel in the galaxy had heard about the humans who fixed impossible problems and asked for nothing in return except the satisfaction of helping people in trouble. Dr. Veldaz became something of a celebrity at scientific conferences, demonstrating the hybrid human Valterian systems that were still running better than factory specifications. He'd show holographic displays of the impossible engineering connections, the biometal that had learned to work with crude human components, and the efficiency improvements that shouldn't have existed according to established physics. Young researchers started asking questions that made their professors uncomfortable. Why were they spending months planning expeditions with backup systems for their backup systems, when humans could apparently fix anything with spare parts and determination? Why did they wait for official rescue teams when there were people out there willing to help immediately? That's when the coincidences started happening. The research vessel Curious Mind developed mysterious engine problems while conducting surveys near the Tau Ceti system, which just happened to be along a known human trade route. The exploration ship Deep Thought experienced life support failures in the Beta Centauri sector, where human mining operations were common. The scientific vessel questioned everything had navigation system malfunctions near human colony worlds. In each case, the human response was immediate and effective. Captain Rodriguez of the Hammer Time pulled the Curious Mind crew out of a radiation storm using nothing but industrial-grade magnetic clamps and sheer audacity. The mining vessel Rock Crusher saved the Deep Thought by sharing their atmospheric processors, creating a jury-rigged life support system from equipment designed for asteroid processing. The colony transport New Frontier helped to question everything by installing human navigation computers alongside their quantum positioning systems, creating a hybrid setup that was accurate to within centimeters. The pattern was always the same. Humans arrived quickly, worked without concern for regulations or proper procedures, fixed problems in ways that shouldn't work but did, and left behind grateful aliens and improved systems. They never asked for payment, never demanded recognition, and never filed official reports with galactic authorities. The Valterian High Council noticed these patterns, even if they couldn't officially acknowledge them. In a closed session that was never recorded in public documents, they quietly authorized modifications to all Valterian vessels. Emergency communication arrays were upgraded to include monitoring of human frequencies, disguised as expanded spectrum analysis capabilities for scientific purposes. Captain Zixera kept the human emergency beacon that Tom Davis had given to Pixnon mounted right next to her captain's chair, where she could reach it instantly if needed. She told curious crew members that it was a cultural artifact from their rescue experience. But everyone knew the real reason, just in case. 6 months later, that precaution saved lives. Zixera's sister ship, the Peaceful Journey, was conducting deep space archaeology when they encountered something that definitely wasn't in any textbook. Pirates. The Krillian raiders were known for capturing research vessels and selling their crews on the black market, and they'd surrounded the Peaceful Journey with overwhelming firepower. Captain Morven of the Peaceful Journey could have called Galactic Command and waited 3 hours for a military response that might arrive too late. Instead, she followed her sister's example and sent a direct transmission to something called Houston Control, using frequencies she wasn't supposed to know existed. Houston Control, this is Captain Morvan of the Valterian research vessel Peaceful Journey. We are currently surrounded by hostile vessels and requesting any available assistance for what we politely term immediate consultation. The response came back so fast, it was almost like the humans had been waiting for the call. Ma'am, this is Captain Kelly Thompson aboard the Reaper. We're locked and loaded. About 15 minutes from your position. What seems to be the problem? Locked and loaded. The casual way the human said those words sent chills down Morven's spine. But for the first time since the pirates had appeared, she felt hope. The cavalry was coming. And from what her sister had told her, humans had very definite opinions about people who threatened innocent researchers. The pirates were about to learn what happened when you picked on someone the humans considered worth protecting.